Thank you everyone for being here. My name is Eric. I'm co-founder at Node Finance, and today I'll be talking about how we're leveraging developer tools to accelerate the adoption of Web3 mobile apps and wallets. So our mission at Node is to let anyone with a smartphone access financial services. And the main problem we're trying to solve is that, like I think everyone in this room, we believe that blockchain is a viable rail to provide banking services for people through mobile. But as it currently stands, it's too complicated, both for the users of these tools, but also the developers building the products for them. So our solution is to treat DeFi protocols and blockchains as underlying infrastructure that could be aggregated and integrated into a single product. That product, for us, is a React native SDK that makes it super easy to launch Web3 mobile apps and wallets. So if we zoom in on that code snippet in the bottom right corner, you'll see that we can create a wallet, set the default gas currency to Celo Euro, and set the default mnemonic language to Spanish, all with just 3 lines of code. And our thesis is that developers and enterprises and builders like yourself will want to super easily launch mobile apps with Web3 integrations without understanding the underlying smart contracts and protocols behind the scenes. So our SDK has 3 main components. First is authentication, which makes it super easy to create a wallet, recover a wallet using a mnemonic, or connect an external signer like MetaMask. We can also let you read data from the blockchain, so current state like token balances, but also historical data like transaction history, and more complex queries like historical portfolio value priced in local fiat currency. And then lastly is subscribing to webhooks, or subscribing to events via webhooks. And then finally, since we're an SDK and we sit client side, we could help you with some of the transaction signing as well. So things like payments, payment requests, lending, liquidity pooling, staking, and more. So I said earlier, DeFi is not super easy, but we're trying to make it easy. 2 ways we do this. One is through transaction automation. So we have a swap router that finds the best pricing across exchanges and also enables one-tap farming, so you could earn interest from any asset. The second way is through seamless key management, so we make it easy to leverage biometrics in your application, and we're also working on social recovery and secure cloud backup options. That first point there about DeFi, just wanted to note that this is powered by our on-chain router called Minima, and it also has an API component that lets you do swaps, lending, farming, and all that from one API. Just to kind of set the scene on where we sit with respect to everyone else. So we're a mobile-first infrastructure provider, kind of like Morales or Tatum, but laser focus on mobile. But you're probably wondering, if I'm a builder, why use a mobile SDK as opposed to just regular APIs? A few different reasons. One of the main benefits of building on mobile is being able to do push notifications. This is a great way to engage with your users and notify them for things like changes in token balances, but also like how much money they earned over the past week. Second, a lot of people building in this room are building for people in emerging markets, and they tend to be on resource-constrained Android devices. So you'll want to do as much off-device as possible, and that's where our back-end data service comes in, and also seamless state management. Lastly, if you're doing a wallet, you're going to want to secure the private key in a very secure way, ideally using the on-device encryption. So we make it easy to leverage Face ID and the secure enclave in your application. But most importantly, you should be focused on building beautiful products. You should not be wasting your time building back-end infrastructure to do things like push notifications. Real quick, just to rapid fire through some use cases. So Impact Market, they used our SDK to vertically integrate and roll out their own wallet for their UBI beneficiaries. So no more bouncing back and forth between different applications. We're also doing a microcredit pilot in Brazil using our payment request feature. You can use this for remittances, DeFi, and a lot more. Here's a real quick demo showing the user flow on Celo. So you can see we're going to select a liquidity pool on UBSwap. We're going to change the token to Celo Euro. We're going to do a one-sided deposit. And then the router will handle everything sort of. It's not showing. Okay. Beautiful. Can you see my? Okay, cool. Well, anyways, besides that, so all of our clients, so something that we built using our data APIs is actually a thing called mission control. So all of our clients get a dashboard to visualize their on-chain and off-chain user data in one place. So for example, you could look at where are my iOS users and how does their on-chain transaction volume compare to my Android users. Lastly, we're in Berkeley. We hold hackathons all the time, so if you're in the space and want to collaborate, let us know. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. That was pretty exciting. I think we're going to switch laptops just really quickly. Really quickly, I know one thing we've talked about is the importance of having providers like Node in the space as we're focusing more on user experience. Can you speak a little bit about that before we jump into sort of a broader panel? Why is it important for SDKs like Node to exist as we're moving towards adoption?
Yeah, great question. So I know a lot of people that are trying to roll out a wallet right now. For example, the Collectivo wallet. Many of you may have heard of that earlier. So they're using the Valora wallet as a starting point. And so, for example, part of the Valora repo is they have this big blockchain API. So they kind of had to build out the indexing services that we've built, the infrastructure we've built, just to have a wallet. So it's kind of like a necessary building block. But that's not their core product. That's not how Valora or Collectivo makes money. And so ideally, you just use a third-party service provider, so that way you could stay laser focused, building a better product and better experience for your users.
Got it. Well, when we're talking about building better experiences, what's exciting about this panel is that we have two different sides of the journey to adoption reflected here. We have the retail use case and the path towards helping build that with Node, but then we also have Anchorage Digital, which is the premier institutional crypto product to help people do things like manage investments, payments, and participate in on-chain activities like governance. As they're getting the slides set up, what we're going to be doing is showing you a handful of screenshots from some reports that CRADL has launched, and you'll have the opportunity to download them. If you can't find those, find Tricia at the front. She'll give you the most beautiful postcard in the world that will show you where to download all these reports. But the first report that we published quite recently is about UX and cryptocurrency. And one of the things that we're not the first to point out is that we're at sort of a chasm between early adopters to the early majority. And so can we talk a little bit about, for each of your products, who is the core customer that you're working with, that you end up using your products?
Yeah, sure. Hey everybody, I'm Boaz. I'm the head of product and design at Anchorage Digital. As you so kindly mentioned, we are a digital asset platform for institutions to be able to custody their assets, buy and sell assets, lend them out. We also have APIs for clients to be able to build their own products on top of our bank. We're also the only nationally chartered bank for digital assets in the US. Our clients started out, as you might expect, with the earliest adopters of all institutional clients, what we now call crypto VCs, but before didn't have a name. So folks like A16Z, Paradigm, and even Avital at Electric, who you guys heard from earlier today, are clients of ours, and have evolved over time to much more traditional financial institutions who you guys are hearing day to day are getting farther and farther into crypto, including folks like Visa. And we just announced that we're custodying for Apollo, which maybe you guys haven't heard of, but is one of the largest alternative investment firms in the US. These clients grow into a group of people that know less and less about really the core of crypto. And even more interestingly, when you get to the small firms who start out really forward-thinking, really visionary, really deeply understand crypto and are thinking ahead on it and want to invest and want to participate and want to use things like XLR and all the stuff you guys have heard about. As they grow, they bring on more and more people into the organization, and it takes a long time for folks to really understand the fundamentals of what it means to interact with digital assets. So one of the cool things about working at an enterprise-focused digital asset company is that you're not just building a product to try to seek out adoption. People are using you because they need to use you in order to accomplish their goals, their investment goals, their product goals. But people within that organization are, almost for lack of a better word, forced to figure out how to interact with crypto. So oftentimes we think about usability and adoption as like, how do we position this product such that it makes sense to people? But what we get to think about is, hey, there are people who must use us in order to get their job done, and they're doing it in a really high-stakes environment with millions or billions of dollars under management. How do we make it so that they're comfortable? It's a really different angle on the problem of making usability a real thing on web and on mobile, which is a thing that we have too.
So when you're seeing this shift from moving from sort of crypto native institutions towards some of these different institutions, it sounds like you're experiencing different hurdles in like overcoming obstacles about understanding and using the product. Are you seeing that more on like a company to company level, or how deep does it go? Is it on the individual employee type or job function that's using it?
Absolutely. Within every institution, the cool thing about working with institutions is that they're made up of a huge number of different types of personas. You have the folks who are deep in it and focused on investment and don't understand sort of the operations side or the accounting side. You have the people whose job it is to make sure that all the numbers line up at the end of the day, and they don't understand the nuances between something that supports Celo, which has its own complexities, and then Bitcoin, and then Ethereum, and then tokens on top of Ethereum. All these different assets have fundamentally different expressions and ways in which you can use them. In fact, that's why they exist, is because they're different. But it's on us to build a platform that makes these as similar to each other as possible. So we definitely have many different kinds of actors, not just within an organization, but that connect. So even something like a venture capital firm or an investment fund has a totally different party called a fund administrator that needs to look into what they're doing and help them do their work. And then auditors who have to contact us through a different direction and understand what it is that we provide for them. It's really a whole ecosystem that makes these assets available and usable to these institutions, who are then in turn making them available to the rest of the world through the products that they built.
Totally. And Eric, I know you spent a ton of time looking at mobile apps and Web3 especially. How do you think about overcoming this chasm, especially through tools that make building Web3 native or mobile native apps with Web3 using services like Node?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the easiest way is, by leveraging tools like ourselves, you can dramatically cut down the time to ship a product like this to market. Previously, there's tons of tools out there if you're building a React app for browser, but if you're building natively for mobile, which is kind of where we're trying to push things, the tools are a bit sparse. And so, yeah, just leveraging tools to kind of accelerate that adoption. And yeah, that's kind of the TLDR.
Well, one of the things that's cool about what you're doing at Node, and also what you'd mentioned about Boaz, about the different sorts of people who have to use Anchorage's product, is that there's people with various levels of understanding of how these products work who are trying to engage with them. I mean, Eric, you're launching like several different pilots and use cases, all for audiences that are entirely different. One thing that we've also noticed in this UX report is that the state of UI in cryptocurrency is actually pretty good. You've got this cute little unicorn of UI, everything's very beautiful, the art is lovely, but hidden underneath that is really unpredictable and dangerous UX. And especially when you're talking about, high-stakes situations like institutional crypto activities, or if you're talking about UBI and you're getting your most of your income through a mobile wallet, those are both really high-stakes activities where you need to understand what's happening, and mobile can obscure that. How do you think about navigating the difference between user interface and user experience?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think I kind of touched on this in our deck, but by giving developers more time to focus on that UX instead of building out the backend infra. But one kind of trend that we've noticed is a lot of our clients, they're following this theme of trying to vertically integrate. So someone like Impact Market or like a DEX on, say, Celo or Polygon, they have to rely on another wallet provider for a user to access their core product. And so you have no control over that onboarding experience. This was particularly the case with like Impact Market, to where they're onboarding new users to Web3. They're not tapping into an existing market. And so by vertically integrating and rolling out your own kind of native mobile wallet with your dApp and protocol integration, you have full control over that onboarding experience. So if you want to do a regular EOA, you can do that. But if you want to do an MPC wallet, that's also possible. And then even integrate with custody providers like Anchorage.
It is a problem, and it's an especially interesting problem when you think about mobile. A lot of times, even when you think about people who are more traditional people who interact with finance on a day-to-day basis, they view mobile from a position that it's less secure than what they're used to, even if it's more secure, only because those are the kinds of applications that they're used to dealing with. we're entering a new world where sort of the younger people, and as the millennials become the people who are working in finance and Gen Z, that's changing, and we want to be on the forefront of that. But one of the things that's really important to do is to signal when things are safe and when things are not safe. Because security is not a thing that anybody really understands unless you're a real security expert and a real crypto expert. One of the things that we try to do is always tell the user ahead of time what to expect when they're taking an action. When you are in a high-stakes environment, when you're not only dealing with your money in the application that you've built, but you're dealing with maybe other people's money because you're in a collaborative environment or you're an institution, and you're dealing with money where you know, because it's been drilled into you for crypto, that if you make a mistake, that money can be gone forever, you are freaking out. Right? You really do not want to do the wrong thing because you don't want to be the idiot who loses their funds. So exploring, which is the thing that we're really used to encouraging people to do, especially in mobile apps and all the apps you use on a day-to-day basis, is a thing that sometimes individuals and definitely institutions are much less likely to do. Click around, click on things, try things out, figure out what works and what doesn't. They're much less likely to do that because they feel the stakes are very high. And so signaling as much as possible, all the invisible security that you build into the background, surfacing it up so that people understand where the safety is coming from and what to expect is super, super key to making people comfortable using your application.
Yeah, I think the point that when people are in high-stakes situations, the things that you might think are easy to discover about your app might not be because people aren't looking under every rock is a really interesting point. In this report, there's another concept we introduced called experience bridges. We're all familiar with how bridging between chains is quite insecure in the current state of things, but another point of user experience insecurity is when you have to switch between mobile apps to do a specific activity. A great example of this is if you need to use your MetaMask wallet to buy an NFT on OpenSea, for instance. Each of you are building things that are fundamentally quite siloed applications, it sounds like. Like Anchorage, it's very safe to do activities within Anchorage, and then for Node, you're making sure that people can build these vertically integrated wallets. How do you think about creating safe user experiences across mobile applications?
Yeah, I'll start that off. So if you guys were able to see the demo, I think it gave a good example of how we're tackling this. So another sort of use case of our SDK that some of our clients are doing is kind of the DeFi super app narrative. So all of DeFi wrapped up under one hood. And in the demo, it kind of showed how you can interact with a bunch of different DeFi protocols through a native interface within the application without going to an external app or using an in-app browser. The way we do that is by actually offering like SDK functionality for interacting with these smart contracts. And so for that, as a developer, you don't have to worry about understanding the smart contract code. You as a user, you don't have to trust some random developer who maybe doesn't understand Solidity too well, but maybe they're a great React Native developer. And so by us doing that, we are kind of consolidating, which is a form of centralization, but at the same time, we're kind of removing unnecessary barriers to interact with these different smart contracts, and in my opinion, creating an overall safer environment and a much better user experience.
Interacting with the apps and dApps that exist today is sort of the key innovation. It's one of the real things that make DeFi and blockchain so exciting. The fact that people can't innovate and build on top of applications and interact freely with new things that come out in a quick way. So allowing that and sort of building up ways in which we can support that is really, really important. But it's also really hard to do because there's a lot of obscurity when you jump in between. It gets super technical super quickly when you jump in between different kinds of applications. The first thing that we do is identify which workflows are most common, right? What are the things that we know that clients really want to do, and then we bring that into the product as much as possible. So for instance, with Celo, we were one of the launch partners for Celo, and we were, I think, the first interface for governance for Celo, and institutions can, from the Anchorage product and even from the Anchorage app, delegate to validators, vote on governance, interact with their release contracts, all super complex interactions directly from the product. And one of the things that we did there was understand which workflows you could do and simplify, people wanted to do, and simplify down the interactions. So you can't do literally anything just like you can do on the blockchain. You can do the things that we know people are most likely to do. And then if you want to do something more complex, it's harder, right? So you make the easy things easy and the difficult things possible. And then when you start to really branch out, interacting with any sort of smart contract that's out there, it's again about communicating to people, what are your expectations? Do you understand what it is that we provide and what is now on you to understand? And surfacing the things that you want them to see as soon as possible and as consumably as possible so that they're doing the right thing. So what's the wrong thing? Like what MetaMask used to do, which is just like show you a blob, right? Here's a hex. Do you want to sign this? Has anybody ever figured out that that was actually the right thing? I don't think so. We have to do better if we want people to have better experiences.
Awesome. One thing, as we're just getting close up to time here, but I think that the key point of this session, is to talk about how we achieve scalability through onboarding and better onboarding experiences in Web3. And so I do want to share really quickly a report that CRADL is launching in just a couple of weeks here about onboarding. We talk about how onboarding has has two key parts. The first is the spark, when people decide to use the product, and then the second is the signature first experience. And a key feature of this is actually a tool for any builders in the audience to use to really define your onboarding experience. So make sure that you scan the QR code so you can learn about that. But as we're just wrapping up here, I think a nice note to lead on would be, what's one piece of advice you have for people building products in the space to help build for the next billion users?
Minimize tech debt and don't build infrastructure you don't need. We started out as a consumer-facing mobile wallet, and we quickly evolved into an infrastructure provider for that exact reason.
I would say aim at value, right? There's a lot of cool things. There's a lot of amazing tokenomics. One of the things I really like about the Celo community is that it's one of the most focused communities on how are we actually making people's lives better. And it's not fixated necessarily on how do I make all these different numbers go up. That kind of value is the thing that is going to make people really understand why we've all gotten into this industry, what we actually think it can bring to the world, and how new people can build applications on top of it. So aim at something that says, hey, yeah, I think if this happened, if this existed, people's lives would be better.
Amazing. My final thought is, I think my piece of advice would be to keep listening to other people who've built amazing things so you can learn from them. A great way to do that is by looking at the reports we've already written, and also keep being at events like this, meeting the amazing people in this community. So give it up for our panelists, and I'll hand it back to Nikhil.